Hello, this is Hans. Today we're going to tie my Bootstrap Leech. I tie this in a size 10, a 12, and a 14. The size 10 is going to take a 3.3 millimeter bead, the 12 takes a 2.8, and the 10 takes a 2.3 millimeter bead. They're all going to get wraps of 020 lead wire. The size 10 hook gets 14 wraps, 12 hook gets 12 wraps. The size 14 hooks gets only 10 wraps. So since we're doing a size 10 today, we're going to do 14 wraps of this 020 lead. Okay? So let me get this started on here. I had just finished a cup of coffee, so I'm nice and shaky for you. 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 14. We'll wiggle that and break it off. Tuck in the tag back here and slide it up to the bead. Okay, so we're going to use some Camel 6/0 uni thread to get that started right behind these wraps of lead to kind of hold them in place a little bit here. And then I'm going to go very, very loosely over those wraps up to directly behind the bead. Take my tag from the thread and bring it forward and capture that behind the bead with 2 wraps, and then I'm going to fold my thread backwards along the other side of those lead wraps and take my thread over them. So that's going to make it so that when I start putting a little bit of pressure on these lead wraps up here, my thread's not going to suck into them. And then we can go ahead and trim off that tag. Okay, we'll work our thread forward up to the bead, and now we're going to add a couple sticks of that same 020 lead wire on either side of the hook shank to help broaden it a little bit. Okay, so again, I've got the 020 lead wire here. We're going to extend some off of the spool. I'll face the top of the hook shank towards you so you can see what I'm doing here. Hold that lead on the side, a couple loose wraps, and position it right where I want it. And we'll secure it down the side of the lead wraps, and we want to go just beyond those lead wraps and suck that lead stick in and then work back forward. Okay, and then I'm just going to wiggle that lead, break it off, and now we're going to put a stick on the other side. So again, I'll just get a piece of this lead pointing out here, grab it with my thread, walk it down the far side of the hook shank beyond the lead wraps, secure it, and then work my thread back forward. And then I can wiggle that and break it off. Make sure everything looks uniform up here. I'm pretty happy with all that. I'll go back one more time, surpass the lead sticks, put a couple wraps behind them, and then back forward. Now you don't need to cover this entirely because this is all going to be covered with lead, so we just want to make sure it's symmetrical on the hook shank. And then you can throw in a whip finish here. And that's basically all the tying portion for this fly. Okay, so here's what we're with. This is the chassis. Now we're going to go use our one material, which is going to be these Hareline Leech leather strips. We're doing this one in brown. Now if you look at this leech leather, let's see if we can show you here on camera. There's a smooth side, which I'm showing you right now, and then there's a side that's a little more rough. Okay, we want, when the fly is finished, it's going to be riding through the water, hook point up, and we want the smooth side to face up. Basically we want the rough side to be against the lead and the thread because the glue adheres to it better. So we're going to hang at least 2 inches off. I kind of measure this in my vise. I make sure it comes past here because we can always trim later. We can never put more on. Okay, so we've got at least 2 inches hanging off there, and then I'm going to pierce through the rough side with the hook point and make sure I do this right in the center of the leech leather. Okay, pop that through, take the hook out of the vise, move that leather around the bend, and then put the hook back into the vise. Alright, now I need to pierce a hole in the leech leather for the eye of the hook to go through. So I'm going to hold that leech leather forward, get an idea of where that eye is, and poke right through the middle. And then I will push the needle away from the side that I'm holding, and then pull the needle, just trying to make that hole more oval shaped so I can get that hook eye through. Okay, now we're going to test fit. So I'm going to rotate the vise like this, try to stick that hook eye through this hole, make sure it's going to fit before we start putting any glue on here. Okay, so that's great. That's exactly what we're looking for right there. So I'm going to go ahead and take the leech off of the eye of the hook, slide it around the bend, out of the way, and we're going to go to Zap-A-Gap. Now, if you're not very good at working with super glue, you might want to go with the gel. I like to use the more liquidy super glue for this personally. What we don't want is when we pinch this for the glue to shoot out the sides of the leather, because then it's going to make a mess and it does not look good. So we want a lot of glue, but not an excessive amount of glue. So I'm going to rotate the hook, or rotate the vise so the hook point is up, and then we're going to hit all of this thread with a liberal amount of super glue. We want like a bubble of super glue on top of the lead and the thread. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my leech leather, pierce the eye of the hook through the hole, and then use my bodkin to push this leather down onto that super glue. And then I will pinch each side a little bit. I'm not trying to wrap the leather around the hook shank when I do this. I'm just trying to pinch it so it adheres clear out to the sides. Okay, just like that. I have a little bit of leather on each side of the lead sticks. That's exactly what we want. Okay, now we're going to add more super glue to the top side of the hook shank here. And I am going to make sure to get just a little bit of super glue right beyond the lead onto this tail piece of leather right here where I'm pointing with the bodkin. Okay, so here we go again with more super glue. Apply it to the thread liberally, but not to the sides of the leather, just the thread and the lead. And we're going to jam a little bit on the right behind the lead, so you'll be able to see that dark spot on the leather back there, all that glue. And then we're going to take this, not stretching it, folding it loosely, lining everything up, and press with our thumbs, and then hold. We're going to press and hold and let all of that glue adhere. Give it about 10 seconds and you should be good. Again, I'll come in and I'll pinching each side of the leather just to make sure I have all that glue securing it. You'll notice we didn't get we didn't get super glue shooting out the sides. That's perfect. Okay, now I'll lift up this. What's cool is the way I tie this, there's zero waste on this leather. So I have this big, huge, long piece of leather still attached. We're going to cut that off. Nice and flush. And then that straight cut, I'm going to go ahead and just nick off these corners here on each side to make it round. Just makes it look a little bit better. I'm sure the fish don't care, but I like to do it anyway. Okay, so I nicked off the corners and made a little round there. And that's it. The fly is tied. Now all we have to do is trim the tail. Okay, so you can see we've got this leech total length about 2 inches long here. What we're going to use to cut the tail is we need a straight edge. That's this ruler. And then we're going to use one of these circular razor blades. Makes this really nicely. Now you could do this with a pair of scissors. It's just not as clean or as pretty looking, so we're going to use the straight edge here. Now I like to butt it up against the bend of the hook. Get just barely a sliver over there, and then almost to the middle at the tip, but not quite. Then take our razor blade out, run it along the edge there. Okay, so you can see we got that piece off. Now if I didn't get it quite all the way to the end there, I'll come in and just clean up real quick. Okay, so we removed that side. I'm going to rotate the leech because this is easier for me to do with my right hand. And then again, I'm going to butt the straight end of the straight edge up against the bend of the hook. Okay, this is kind of what we're working with here. And I'm going to run this razor blade right along that. Okay, so we took that side off. Now I didn't get it quite up to the bend of the hook there. It's a little bit harder to do on camera, so I'm going to do another trim job right here. We're basically looking for a universal, or like a symmetrical taper. There we go, that's a little better. Okay, and then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to round out the very tip of this. With my scissors. So I like to come in here, nick off the corner, flip it over, nick off the corner again, and maybe a tiny little couple cuts on these corners. Not sure if you can see what I'm doing here, but just give it a little bit of a roundness, and that's it. That's the Bootstrap Leech. Alright, so that is my Bootstrap Leech. This thing has been an absolute killer for me this year in both rivers and still waters alike. You get that nice kind of tapered tail end, and you know how the front mouth end of a leech is always flat. That was kind of the idea behind this whole thing. So go ahead and tie some up for yourself. I like to do these in brown, black, peacock, and claret or wine. And give them a shot. Let me know what you think. Thanks.